r/AskReddit. Has anyone had a celebrity not safe for work encounter? What's your story? I was shooting behind the scenes photos of a D-list celebrity boxing tournament in college. After a long day of witnessing the power of egos and 15 minutes of fame, the Optimum giving me Advil for my back, Coolio calling me a G, and seeing Joe's Canseco put on fake tattoo sleeves, I was ready for drink. I had been talking to an absolutely beautiful ring girl and she wanted to join me for a beer after the fights ended. We went upstairs to the bar and she went to get us a table. I went over to the bar, and while waiting for the drinks, fucking Ron Jeremy himself came up next to me. He said he had seen me talking to the girl all night and offered to wingman for me. Luckily my confidence was already sky high for already getting the girl to come drink with me, so I politely declined and went to join her waiting at a table nearby. He told me to stick my thumb in her butt later for him. This is actually from a director I worked with. In the 80s, he was hired as a backstage dresser for a Broadway show that had Patti LuPone in it, and it was his first show. I don't remember what the show was, but there was a scene where she runs off stage. He was instructed to stand right off stage and hold his hands out at a very specific position, which is common in quick change situations, where an actor might have to hand off or literally throw a costume piece to make their change. What actually happened is that his hands were in the perfect position to get 2 handfuls of boob. As she ran off stage she pulled her breasts out so that he would grab them. Apparently she likes pranking new crew members. I was in the bathroom of a restaurant in Vegas taking a massive shit. In walks someone and sits in the next stall. After a couple moments I hear holy shit what died over there. I apologize and eventually get up and wash my hands. As I was drying them the other stall flushes and out walks Ryan fucking Reynolds. If I hadn't have just shit I would have shit my pants. He looks at me and just shakes his head and asks what I ate so that he doesn't do this to his wife. I just mutter Subway. Anyways, we continued talking while he was drying his hands and he asked where my table was. I tell him, and by the fate of God he was sitting just a few over. Next thing I know my girlfriend and I are sitting at the same table as Reynolds and his wife. Honestly the best 3-hour dinner I've ever had. I've met other famous people before, but I've never met anyone as genuine and down to earth as him. My friend pantsed. Full pantsing with penis out and the whole shabbing. His brother and James Franco saw everything. It was near where John Lennon was shot, by that patch of flowers. Can't remember what it's called. His brother was wearing a James Franco selfie shirt while we were in New York City. Franco pointed at his shirt and did like a finger gun and wink thing. Sounds weird but looked really cool at the time. Then his brother said James fucking Franco just winked at me and then he got pantsed. Franco's eyes bulged a bit and he started laughing and shaking his head. He never broke pace, just kept walking. After he was a ways past us, he loudly said rockin' shirt man. Not NSFW as in 6, but had a rather amusing dicks out moment discussing Shakespeare with Leslie Nielsen. I was in Stratford watching a production of Hamlet starring one of his friends. He was sitting somewhere above us, in a private section. After the applause died I made a beeline for the door. I was starving, having had to skip the requisite pre-theater meal, and leveled the head of his entourage/bodyguard with my shoulder when he stepped out into the aisle. I still don't know if the guy was protection Paresi, but he was modestly big and dressed like one. Mild commotion ensues, with lots of Canadian apologizing all around. Nielsen throws a karate stance and then starts laughing his ass off. We happened to end up in the same restaurant later that evening. I hit the washroom, and as I was about to have a piss, and in strolls Nielsen. He notices me, and then, as awkwardly as possible, chooses a urinal directly next to me. He starts telling me, in classic Nielsen deadpan, how he fired the guy 1 week away from retirement, how his kids are going to go hungry, not enough money to buy his wife clothes, which is fine, because she's pretty good looking for an amputee, etc. I just kind of default into listening mode because it was hilariously weird. After a bit he looks over at me as drolly as possible and says, "Kid, I'm 3/4 of a century old. This takes a while. "You gonna say something?" So I asked him about the play and how he felt his friend had handled a couple of notoriously tricky scenes. Our conversation, dicks in hand, was largely confined to the comic aspects of playing Hamlet, as you'd expect, but while brief it was illuminating. Eventually, decorum allows his zip to dictate my zip. We wash our hands, still chatting, and then head back out. Outside the washroom he extends his hand and says, rather conventionally, "Well, it was a pleasure, Vero," and, impulsively, I shake it. He holds on just a little too long, and then starts grinning lewdly at me, and repeats, "A pleasure, I fucking lost it." He walks back to his table. "R.I.P. you glorious son of a gun." I worked my way through college as a waiter in a gourmet room in Las Vegas. I became acquainted with Florence Henderson, R.I.P., and she would ask to sit in my station. One evening she had a guest, Joan Rivers, me. Henderson had a favorite wine, Peace Porter, that she always ordered. It just so happened that on our wine list, that wine was labeled as #69. That's how she ordered it. "I'll have a bottle of 69. On this night, I approached the table, introduced myself to Ms. Rivers, and made the usual small talk. Then I asked, "So Ms. Henderson, would you like a little 69 tonight?" OMG, Joan Rivers went completely insane. She started screaming and yelling and demanding security to have me fired and arrested, and the whole time, Florence Henderson is trying to calm her down and explain. Long story short, the maitre d' put me in another area, and not long after I graduated and left that job, and I never forgot that story. This happened in 1985. Holy shit, I never thought I'd get the chance to tell this story. I can't tell people in real life, because they will never believe me, and I guess you guys will probably call me a liar too, but whatever. I went on a date with Taylor Swift before she got super famous. It was right out of high school when she was making a name for herself, but not yet a gigantic deal. I knew her because we lived near each other. It was the craziest thing, really. I only asked her out on a dare because even not famous, she was way out of my league. But it turns out she was really nice and enjoyed the opportunity to go hang out for a while. She always had a reputation as a girl who burns the candle at both ends, and she's always stressed, so I think she just wanted to relax. It was a pretty basic just out of high school date. We went to see a movie, and I got to feel like a jackass rolling up to her super nice house in my post-Datsun Honeybee. Don't let her early work fool you. She's a rich kid. Anyway, onto the crap you guys are actually wanting to hear about. So, after the movie and some dinner, we go back to my place to listen to some music. After a while, she pretends to be interested in checking out the hiking trails out behind my house. She said she really enjoys being out in the woods, but I figured she just wanted to be away from my parents. So we get out into the woods and very quickly get into some heavy making out. Clothes go everywhere, and that's when this story starts to take its turn. Gentlemen, I have some things to tell you about Taylor Swift. First thing, turns out she loves giving head. Pretty much the most enthusiastic beach of my life happened on that trail. She couldn't get enough. However, she's terrible at it. She's got heart, but I hope for all future guys' sakes that she took some lessons. She's all teeth, and she's got that thing where her tongue is just ridiculously rough. After a while of that, we get down to the main event. Another thing you should know about her is that she is somewhat hairier than one might expect from a super hot rich girl. I never got to ask her what was up with that, actually. So anyway, we are getting our awkward teenage bone on, and she's just as crazy as she was before. Except this time she's just straight up clawing my back to shreds. I'm not going to pretend I didn't make it where I needed to go, but goddamn I was expecting some kind of revelation from her. It was one of those things where it is so disappointing because you had expected so much from it. So, after it was all said and done, we are putting our clothes back on when I notice that I'm actually bleeding from my back. I had known she had hair heart in it, but I didn't expect for her to draw blood. But then I noticed her nails were longer and sharper than I had noticed before. And that's when I started to put it all together. She clawed my back. Her BJ was all teeth. She likes being in the woods. She went on a date with a guy driving a Datsun Honeybee. Guys, Taylor Swift is a motherfucking bear. I must have shown on my face when I put it all together because she got a glint in her beady black eyes and roared. I didn't even bother putting my clothes back on. I just ran for dear life. Luckily, I knew the woods behind my house better than she did. Even more luckily, I was able to squeeze through some spots that her 1,000-pound frame just couldn't get. Winter was coming soon. I knew if she caught me, I'd be killed and stuffed into the cave she cleverly disguised as an expansive suburban home so that she could keep her energy up before hibernation began. I eventually wound up hiding in a stump by a stream until she gave up and left. It was the most frightened I've ever been in my life. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for I upload daily and suggest what subreddit I should cover next. Thank you and happy travels.